Picture this. You walk into the room as a kid, excited just to be seen. Nobody looks up. Later, you come back with a good grade, a trophy, a perfect behavior report, and suddenly there are smiles, warmth, maybe even a hug. Your brain quietly learns, they only care when I'm impressive. Years later, you're still stuck in that pattern, always performing, always proving, never feeling like you're enough just by existing. If that hits a little too close, keep watching. These are 7 signs you only felt loved when you performed as a child, and understanding them might finally explain why you're so tired of being the strong one. Sign 1. You became the peacemaker because chaos felt dangerous. Here's the thing about the strong one. They didn't become strong by choice. You remember the tension in your home, sometimes loud and explosive, sometimes a heavy silence that felt even worse. You didn't just listen with your ears, you listened with your nervous system. You read footsteps, the way doors closed, how plates were set down. You learned to predict the weather in the room to stay safe. You tried to be the fixer, the one who calmed things down. That's not just being a good kid. That's parentification, a child stepping into an adult role because someone had to. Now, as an adult, you still rush to fix everything around you. On the outside, it looks like kindness. On the inside, it's survival. Sign 2. Approval was the only form of affection you recognized. If sign 1 felt familiar, this next one might sting even more. Think back. When did you actually get praise? Not when you were sad or scared, but when you performed. When you got good grades, behaved perfectly, or made things easier for others. Maybe you were like the kid who brought home straight A's and finally heard, "You're making us proud." But when you were overwhelmed or hurting, everyone was too busy or too tired. Your brain did what it had to do. It linked worth with performance. It learned that love has strings attached, that being enough means being impressive. That's conditional love, and it burrows deep. Now silence feels like failure, rest feels like guilt, and a day without productivity feels like you're disappearing. You don't chase validation because you're shallow. You chase it because a part of you still believes, if I'm not impressing someone, I'm not worth keeping. Sign 3, you became hyper-aware of every mood around you. This is where love stops feeling safe and starts feeling like a test you can fail. You didn't just grow up, you grew up watching. You studied every tiny change, a pause before someone spoke, a sigh at the end of a sentence, how someone set their bag down. Your childhood turned you into a human radar, always scanning for danger. This is hypervigilance, a trauma response that keeps your nervous system on high alert, even when nothing bad is happening. You weren't careful because you wanted to be. You were careful because everything felt unpredictable. Now you still overthink the messages, replay conversations, and panic over small shifts in tone. You're not too sensitive. You were trained by an environment where one wrong move could mean emotional distance, coldness, or explosion. If you recognized yourself in sign 3, stay with me. Sign 4 is usually the moment people realize why they confuse being needed with being loved. Sign 4, you mistook responsibility for love. No one tells you this. The mature child is usually just a child who never got to be a child. You were probably praised for being so mature and strong, an old soul. But what adults called maturity was often just a child with no choice. A child who packed their own emotions away to carry everyone else's. A child who comforted adults, who became reliable because no one was reliably there for them. Maybe, like a 9-year-old being told, "I don't know what I'd do without you," while comforting a crying parent, it sounded sweet, but quietly taught you that your value was in what you did for others. This shaped your inner child. The part of you that doesn't know how to ask for help, that feels guilty wanting comfort, that confuses survival with identity. You grew up fast, but inside something stayed small and fragile, still waiting for someone to finally say, "You don't have to be the strong one today. Rest, I've got you." Sign 5. You feel loved only when you're useful. This is the sign that makes a lot of people realize, oh, that's why I can't stop overgiving. People admire you for being supportive and strong, for always showing up. You're the one others call in a crisis. But underneath that, there's a scary question. If I stop giving, will they still want me? You confuse being needed with being loved. Because in your childhood, those two things were the same. This often comes from emotional neglect. What didn't happen? No one sat with your feelings or showed you you're lovable just by existing. So you learn to earn your place in people's lives. You overfunction, overhelp, and overgive, and quietly resent that no one seems to do the same for you. You're not broken for feeling this way. You're reacting exactly how a neglected child learns to survive. Sign 6. You apologize for everything, even existing. If you say sorry 20 times a day, this one's for you. You say sorry like it's punctuation. Sorry, can I ask you something? Sorry, I didn't mean to bother you. Sorry, I'm just tired. Maybe you're like the person who apologizes for speaking in a conversation they were invited into, or for crying, or when someone else makes a mistake. Somewhere along the way, you learned that your needs were burdens, your emotions were inconvenient, and your existence had to be justified. This is what happens when a child feels invisible, unless they're performing. So you shrink, you soften your voice, you erase parts of yourself just to keep everyone around you comfortable. Not because you want to, but because you're terrified that if you stop shrinking, someone will say what you've always feared. You're too much. Sign 7. You don't know how to be yourself without performing. And this is the deepest cut of all. When the performance stops, you don't know who's left. When no one needs you, when there's no task, no crisis, no role to play, you feel lost. Who are you if you're not helping? Who are you if you're not impressive? Who are you if you're just you? On your days off, you might feel restless, guilty, or empty. You reach for your phone, check on others, look for problems to solve, anything to avoid that quiet thought. If I'm not useful, do I still matter? You were raised to be a version of yourself that made life easier for others, not a version that made life true for you. Psychologically, this is identity diffusion, a fractured sense of self built around survival instead of authenticity. But here's the truth. You're allowed to exist without performing. You're allowed to rest, to disappoint people, to feel what you feel. You are allowed to be more than a role. Your life doesn't have to be a stage anymore. You spent years believing love was something you had to earn, not something you were born worthy of. You performed, achieved, stayed strong, fixed everything for everyone, and somewhere deep down you kept wondering, if I stop, will anyone still stay? That doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you're too sensitive or too much. It means you adapted to a version of love that was conditional, and your nervous system did whatever it had to do to survive. But now, you're not that child anymore. You're allowed to rewrite the rules. Your healing isn't a luxury, it's necessary. Your peace isn't selfish, it's your birthright. So if you're tired of performing for love and you're ready to actually understand yourself, don't stop here. Subscribe and then watch my next video. 7 traits of people who have suffered too much. Mental health signs. It's not for people who had perfect childhoods. It's for people like you who finally deserve to know why they feel the way they do and how to slowly, gently start choosing themselves.